Hey guys, remember, October is the month of breast cancer awareness, and to raise support, we're donating to Knitted Knockers. You can use their website to request a knocker, or if you'd like to contribute by making your own, they do use double point needles. You can also find approved yarns and crochet patterns. Donate today. And remember, you are loved, you are wanted, and you got this. And don't forget to get checked. Archer wasn't lying. Anybody can get breast cancer, and you might not end up like Claudette. Now on with the video.
A few thousand versions of me had the ingenious idea of banding together.
Hey, what do you know? It's a cowboy version of me.
Jeez, you're easy to impress.
You know, the best part about making a top 10 list is you realize how little somebody actually appears until you do it. Like, no joke, Morty was supposed to get a top 10 best Morty variant video first, but I could barely manage 5. So, Rick gets to go. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Rick and Morty. Or more specifically, Rick Sanchez and his many variants. I wonder if he's forgotten the ice cream with these Ricks. Anyway, Rick and Morty is very important in terms of influence. Like, it's kind of what Adventure Time was in the early 2010s, but for adults, as it influenced a variety of cliches we love and hate in shows nowadays. Among them, the idea of variants, or different versions of the characters, either versions of them plucked from the multiverse, or say, a lab experiment gone wrong. I mean, Michael Waldron, one of the writers of Rick and Morty, also worked on Loki, a show that's all about variants. Like, it literally has Loki falling in love with himself, spoiler alert. And he also wrote Doctor Strange 2, which I have thoughts about because I really don't like what they did with Wanda. But anyway, the multiverse was so ingrained that even Beavis and Butthead got in on this.
Your sentence is death, okay?
Am I to understand that we are definitely not getting a trophy then?
When Rick and Morty being so powerful, I thought it was important to count down the top 10 different versions of Rick and Morty, starting with Rick, I explained why above, and go from there. I guess my only rule is it has to be a different version of Rick. Like, I can't pick Pickle Rick, for instance, even though I really want to.
I'm Pickle Rick!
I'm sorry, because he's still technically our Rick, just like in a new body. Or I can't pick, say, Rick with a mechanical arm or Rick with a different shirt, okay? So let's discuss. Starting with...
And now you're trying to rush it along.
Yeah, and you know, I like high school. I like hanging out. Tiny Rick!
But what if the you that likes it isn't you?
Tiny Rick! Okay, this one is a bit tricky, hence it being number 10, but it is still kind of interesting nonetheless. At the high school, Summer and Morty learn that there's a vampire on the loose, and it recently ate a lunch lady. Or was it Blitz, the Chupra-Kadupra? You may never know. Maybe he likes sucking on something other than cloacas.
Well, what are we going to do?
We're gonna live our lives until we die, possibly by vampire. More likely auto accident or heart disease, but possibly vampire.
And honestly, for some reason, they still have not done like a Twilight or Vampire Diaries parody, so Summer can't just seduce the vampire and go from there. They need Rick's help.
I probably could turn myself into a teenager. Why would I ever do that, ever? And how dare you even ask me that? And why aren't you more ashamed of yourself?
To infiltrate the high school, Rick decides to come dressed as a teenager. Tiny Rick!
Go to the garage, transfer your mind into a younger clone of yourself, and get embroiled in some youthful hijinks. What's the BFD? So here I am. I'm Tiny Rick!
Now, what's unique about Tiny Rick? I'm sorry, I keep doing like that double horns. Is at first, he's basically Rick's consciousness in a new body, while his real body is in a vat in the garage. Not a vat of acid, mind you, just a normal vat. So at first, he is our Rick in a glorified scientific disguise.
Exactly is your old body living in there?
Oh, you know, hyperbaric quantum fluid, that kind of thing. It preserves living tissue. Not that there was much to preserve. Look at that mummy. Ha!
But a problem abounds. See, Tiny Rick gets popular at school, and he helps Morty and Summer get popular too. Morty can finally go on a date with Jessica, unencumbered, while Summer can possibly go out with Toby Matthews, aka Alex Hirsch back when he still hung around with Justin Roiland.
Hey, I like your straightforward style, and that lab coat's pretty cool. Summer?
He knows my name!
Why wouldn't he? You're great!
Rick is willing to go back into his old body until he realizes he needs to help his grandkids and now Butsy's out a tad. And at the house party he froze, I presume later that night, despite seeming all smiley and stuff, well, it turns out Tiny Rick is holding something secret. Rick's consciousness. Tiny Rick essentially overtook the consciousness of old Rick and shoved his consciousness to the back of his mind, not unlike a repressed thought.
Look at his art, Morty.
I've got an emo streak. It's part of what makes me so rad.
Why does it say, "Help me, Morty and Summer"?
Come on, Summer, that's the title of the art.
Which is slowly killing the real Rick and his real body. And therefore, the only way he can come out is subconsciously, via Tiny Rick's teen angst and art projects, like dancing, singing, art.
But those bad thoughts are the real Rick. The fact that we're all going to die one day, so you're trapped in there, and you can only come out in the form of Tiny Rick's teen angst.
Summer, don't call me out. I totally don't use my art as a cry for help. Help me. Yeah. What's better is throughout the episode, Morty is like 100% aware that Rick could potentially be dying and they can't bring him back. But he's fine with pretending he isn't, like as in Rick's potential demise, since it could potentially mean scoring with Jessica. Like even Rick calls him out on it in the end.
Thanks, kids. You figured it out. Well, Summer did. Kinda weird that you were that willing to sell my existence out for some trim, Morty.
Rick almost got Tim and Summer killed just so he could dance around with Daphne. Feels kinda fair. However, Morty changes his mind when he sees Tiny Rick humiliate Summer and make her cry in front of the entire school.
What are you gonna do? I'm Tiny Rick. I'm the coolest kid in your school. How are you gonna just make me do whatever you say, huh?
I'm gonna do what real Rick would do if he was here. I'm gonna kick your ass!
And he holds him down while Summer coaxes old Rick out via the ephemeral majesty that is Elliot Smith. I think that's how I found out who he was. And now I usually know if I have a depression episode when I want to listen to that one song nonstop. Another point I like is how after Rick comes back and scolds Morty, he decides to take Operation Phoenix off the drawing board via tearing his clones, especially Tiny Rick, to pieces. And since Tiny Rick's consciousness overrode Rick, and we do see Tiny Rick's eyes open when Rick stabs him, it kind of makes you wonder if Rick is really stabbing a kid to death or just like an empty shell. But who cares? Grandpa's back, baby!
I guess in a way, maybe.
Already lost interest. Get in the car. I've been inside a kid all day and now I can feel my bones scraping each other.
And one last swing for the road and one last Tiny Rick. Yeah, BTW, I did the devil horns like every time I said his name during this take.
Of all the Ricks in the central finite curve, you're the malcontent, the rogue. I'm the Rick. And so were the rest of you before you formed this stupid alliance.
Okay, I know that the writers don't like how serialized the show is, even though I'd argue it really isn't, but I feel like they're skipping over what could be great material. Until season 3, the Citadel of Ricks is run by the Council of Ricks, who all look like our Rick, albeit with weirdo sci-fi haircuts and giant bathrobes, and black gloves, like maybe they don't wash their hands. They're led by, I think his name is Rick 4, who, yeah, I don't know. But I do like how even if Rick 4 is an evil old guy who keeps lawyer Morty around as a glorified pet.
It's not fair, you have no rights and he's not a lawyer. We just keep him here because he's fun. Look at him go.
Yeah!
Well, he did want what was best for the Citadel. Yes, he does put C-137 on trial, but that's only because, like he puts it,
You have a history of non-cooperation with the council.
yeah, no offense, you don't get involved in your child's life unless they need a place to do laundry or some food. Not to mention, he does try to use actual evidence in the trial, like scanning Rick's portal gun, and when all signs, as far as he know, point to him being implicated, well, he does try to sentence him for the good of the Citadel to a horrible punishment, the machine of unspeakable doom.
Which swaps your conscious and unconscious minds, rendering your fantasies pointless while everything you've known becomes impossible to grasp. Every 10 seconds it stabs your—
Wait, but like, what if you're a female? Ouch! And as we saw in the flashback of Rick Mirai Jack, well, he was part of C-137's inner circle when he was planning the Citadel. So I think that's a sweet detail too, albeit bittersweet. Like two old friends drifting apart, since we do see them talking and hanging out, albeit as cameos. Like how he politely tells Rick and Morty what'll happen to the Mortys that evil Morty captured, or how he attended Rick's party in the season 1 finale, or how to apologize to C-137 for the ordeal, so he gives him a gift.
This voucher for a free replacement Morty in the event that your current Morty— Not a good time. Come on, Morty, let's hit it.
kinda sucks Rick Shank redemption happened. Morty tries to show Summer that Rick is kind of a jerk by showing her the Cronenberg dimension, because clearly Morty didn't have a hand in this with his roofie juice serum.
I can't believe Rick did this.
These are the parts of Rick's adventures you don't get to see. The parts he leaves behind.
Like, even Rick tried telling him. I mean, at least he was like, oh, it's kind of my fault too, I'll admit that. But only to Rick, not to Summer. The Citadel tracks down Morty and Summer and takes them before the council, where Rick 4 is willing to let them go home if they renounce Rick.
What say you, Summer?
I say f you.
Summer, I have stolen that response from you more times than I can count. And Morty refuses to renounce Rick because chances are Rick is not dead. He's coming back with the vengeance of 1,000 suns, which is true. Albeit Rick won't have to become a knight and have his fireman chopped off, so victory.
Let's not suck the ghost of his too hard. He was a terrorist and now he's dead.
But the fact the Citadel captured Morty and Summer and sent assassins against him on top of that means that instead of his revenge only being against the Galactic Federation, it's also against the Citadel as well. Chaos ensues, Rick takes the place of some random Citadel dude, and since they all lost at Rick Laser Scissors, well, the entire council is killed except for Rick 4, who uses the opportunity to take Summer as a hostage. She isn't even his real granddaughter, who cares? He gives a James Bond type speech, recognizing that Rick loves his grandchildren in a non-weird way, and honestly, again, this gives me questions, like why is he so blasé about leaving everything behind he knew to run the Citadel? Was he that committed? Does he not have a family waiting for him? Like, part of me thought that lawyer Morty was his grandson. Did Rick kill his family? Did Rick Prime kill his family? Like, again, that's why I hate when the show says, oh, we hate that we're serialized and we're giving you cool backstories and little snippets. Then don't do such a good job at setting up what ifs in that case. Stop making me ask questions. But a standoff happens, and it seems like Morty has finally taken out all of his ghoulish overkill on Rick. But no, Rick 4 is actually the one who's dead.
Let's go, kids.
What? What happened?
Oldest Rick trick in the book.
Fake gun, shoot me, and standoff. Brilliant!
Yeah. Good thing I saw that note.
And with that, a power vacuum happens because we know nature abhors it because it leaves room for you and me, and therefore the future of hell belongs to Morty.
He's a terrorist! What Rick isn't? The Citadel was founded by Ricks for Ricks to be free. What's your name, young man? Rick, and I'm same age as me, I know.
I hate evil Morty so much for killing off this guy. I'm sorry, I am too in love with him and his stupid purple suit. One of the many plot threads we follow in the Rick-Lantis mix-up is a factory worker Rick. I mean, I think his official name is Rick J22, but I just like Factory Rick, so I'm going with that. It sounds classier.
Yo, J22, give him hell! Alright!
And I used to work in a factory, rolling umbrellas. Nork used to be super industrial, so I think I know what I'm talking about. He was one of the many Ricks who was given portal travel rather than discovering it himself, and as a result, he's stuck working at a cookie factory, a job he despises. That's fair, he probably doesn't get to eat any of the cookies. I would hate that too. Since he was told the Citadel was a place of dreams, and yet he can never go home. One day, well, he has a really bad day. He loses his promotion to a rando with no experience, and he feels like his work is for nothing.
I know I'm new to the Citadel, and some of you might not think I put in my time, but what can I say? Any questions? All right then, back to work, you gold rickers.
So he takes the flavor center of the cookie factory hostage and realizes, oh crap, he has no plan besides take a hostage. I think it doesn't help how much his speech applies to the real world. Like, oh, they told us we were special.
Don't you get it? They told us we were special because we were Ricks, but they stripped us of everything that made us unique.
We know how you feel. We're working stiff Ricks just like you, but our assembly line is justice.
Stop it. I need to tell these lies to my future students. Eventually, he's confronted by a possibly benevolent Rick.
Stop! I'm Rick D. Sanchez III, owner of this here wafer establishment.
Yeah, Wonka Rick sounds cooler, I'm sorry. Like, I have questions. Wonka Rick realizes that Factory Rick has a point and just wants to go home. So he sends him home. Permanently. See, Factory Rick ruined his flavor core, so now he's going to spend eternity being the new flavor core and keeping the business he hates running as punishment, in a loop of thinking he'll get to go to a new life of being free, when really, the cycle is doomed to repeat. Like, he's gonna be trapped there, and it's likely another Rick is gonna snap too and try to take him hostage, and blah 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 blah. I guess another reason why he's so low is I like the idea of him more than the real him. And I feel like the idea of Wonka Rick could have been a full-on episode. I mean, it turns out he's part of the shadow government that apparently ran the Citadel under the nose of the real council. But because he told this to evil Morty that, like, oh, we don't care about you, you're like our puppet, well, he paid with his life. And his wafer cookies. I think another reason I want to know more about him is, earlier in the season, Dr. Wong told Rick that his main problem was basically laziness. As in, he wants to do big projects and sci-fi nonsense, but Rick finds real work, like chores for instance, super boring. And unfortunately, a good chunk of science is chores. Dr. Wong, don't talk about me. I'm sorry, I have too many ideas in my head, and I talk to myself when I'm alone to make them leak out. And she's not totally wrong. I mean, in season 1, Rick made a store to bankrupt the devil, and when he realized that running a store meant actual boring crap like insurance forms, he just destroyed it. He has a universe enslaved to power his car when he could have just put like a sphere or something over the star of that universe rather than the population. Like, he'd probably be able to have more power in that case. It could have been cool to see why Wonka Rick was able to succeed, whereas somebody like Factory Rick was stuck in the Citadel, where they truly quote-unquote lazy? Was it survival of the fittest? Were a few Ricks given portal travel before C-137 and that made them more of a cast like, oh, we're more special than you? How did he make the shadow government? I have questions, but I'm hungry and it's like 6:30 when I'm recording this in the morning, so I'm gonna go eat some cookies.
That's pretty harsh, sir.
So report me.
Look, I'm just saying. Makes me a little sad to hear a Morty cop calling Mortys animals.
Well, it makes me sad to hear another Rick cop buying into his sensitivity training.
Oh my goodness, it's weird to see a cop who cares. But Cop Morty, yeah, I kinda get why they used him. I think it's kinda smart. I mean, when NWA sang F the police, they didn't mean F the white police, they meant all the police. All of them get some. Especially since, as they point out in the song, the minority police know they have power, like they could actually help people, but instead they're just upholding a horrible system. Cop Rick, I'm guessing, is somebody who just joined the Citadel, or just joined the police force, and he's a rookie, which obviously means he doesn't know how the whole system works, and he just wants to go by the book. Only, as is a constant theme in the Ricklantis mix-up, the Rick and Morty caste system is bad, and it's not only bad to the Mortys it oppresses, but the Ricks running it, since they're trapped on the Citadel too, and only a few are actually powerful enough to do anything about it. But some are more aware of their idea of privilege than others, and a tiny sliver try not to let it influence them. Unfortunately, yeah, Rookie Rick is one of them, and he's paired up with Cop Morty.
Oh, sorry, I was expecting...
A Rick partner? Lesson 1, rookie. Expect the unexpected.
Rookie Rick just wants to solve the crimes, but Cop Morty is a dirty cop. Like, instead of arresting the Mortys making the bootleg portal fluid and potentially helping the community, even though, like, you can make the point they want to go home too because that's why they're doing it, he blows it up and blames it on the racial violence, which, considering what Rick did in the Unity episode to the spaceship, wow, just wow.
What happened?
Same old story. Morty's killing Mortys.
It kind of makes you wonder if he was always like this, as in Cop Morty, or if being trapped on the Citadel made him lose hope or whatever, and hey, maybe he ended up like Steven from Django Unchained, like, oh, I have more privilege than you, so I'm gonna rub it in your face.
Who am I to say? To me, you just look like a sidekick. Oh, call me a sidekick one more time! Call me a sidekick! Hey man, come on! Oh, geez, see how I paint a wall?
Like, he even implies there was another Rick before Rookie Rick. What happened to him? Near the end of their segment, Cop Morty takes his partner to meet with Big Morty, who isn't fat or anything. Like, Cop Morty is literally bigger than him. Like, he's just a Morty who runs a club for Mortys where they just, like, dance and stuff.
One thing's for sure, y'all don't have to worry about Cowboy Morty talking. This little cowpoke's gonna mosey up on out of here!
Like, it's kind of weird, don't get me wrong, but this is Morty, and we know he can be a giant perv. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. This is, like, the extent of it. Big Morty is on the payroll of the cops, but Rookie Rick refuses to let this corruption in the community go any further. A shoot-up occurs, and Cop Morty makes one last appeal to Cop Rick, mostly to get his guard down.
Oh, Grandpa Rick, I don't want to be on the Citadel anymore. I want to be a regular kid. I want to go to school and throw balls around.
I've always wondered if he was serious or not, or if he actually did use a legitimate, reason to get Cop Rick to stand down. But Cop Rick does kill Cop Morty, and ironic echo from earlier.
The hell happened in there? Same old story. Rick's killing Mortys.
However, rather than be let go from the Force, Cop Rick is allowed to stay. And I don't totally think it was because new department, new codes, like they said. I feel like he'd be allowed to stay on the Force anyways, because he is a Rick, just either in a new sector, or with something on his file, or suspended without pay. But this is right around the time Evil Morty is elected, and Cop Rick looks confused. Now he's truly living his dream, a society where both groups are equal. Or are they?
Can you pass the acid?
Run, my baby! Bonus!
I hate insects with a burning passion. And in Jersey, we have those spotter and lantern flies and propaganda posters on literal buses reminding us to squish them. Well, the only insect I won't squish is Wasp Rick. Mostly because he's probably way taller than me. Please don't eat me! After traveling around the multiverse via Project Phoenix, many of which are strangely Nazi.
Annoying that I even have to ask. You are down with fascist dystopias? Yes. That yes was pretty liberal with the letter Y.
I have questions, but considering how Hitler in one reality cured cancer, maybe his message just spread across or something, or maybe there's multiple Hitlers who cured cancer, I don't know. Well, Rick ends up in a clone body of Wasp Rick.
Whoa, way to use up a clone. What's the matter with you? You don't talk? Tarantula got your tongue?
At first, it seems like Wasp Rick is like all the others. Mean, rude, a Nazi sympathizer. Well, he is kind of the first two, but he's not the last one, thank the great cloud keeper in the sky. Because Wasp Rick actually turns out to be a good guy for somebody who...
We eat our prey alive, and when we don't, we lay our eggs in their eyeballs so that our young can feast on their brains when they hatch. The least you can do is have a little empathy.
Oh, that's a nice idea to have. So I should have explained. Earlier in the episode, Rick is still feeling the effects of the Richturian candidate, where Beth and Jerry insisted that things would be different. Like how he now has to ask Morty permission to go on missions, rather than just snatching him up from school or the dinner table.
Dad, there's a way we do this now.
Morty, would you please accompany me?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I will do that.
Oh no, consent and boundaries? How dare they? And the whole reason Rick is serving realities is because Morty let him die because of a vision that if he did, he would end up with Jessica.
Morty, you know outer space is up, right?
Yeah, I'm just, following my instinct.
Will you just go up?
Stop, you're gonna make me die wrong!
Wait a minute.
So it's kind of a wake-up call to Rick to see that another Rick has what he lacks, and he's actually thriving under it because it makes his family and their bond stronger.
Can I maybe borrow Morty?
Morty, are you done with your homework?
Not all of it.
Sorry, Dad.
Oh, don't be sorry, sweetie. We're all in this together. We're wasps, not monsters.
Oh, how sweet for wasps. Wasps. I'm sorry, that's one word I can't say. It's like masks. But it is nice that Wasp Rick does help our Rick get home, and he kind of echoes Rick's statements.
He took my Meeseeks boxes! What do you want? Damn, your Morty sucks.
I know, who leaves a fella with only Kirkland brand Meeseeks boxes? I don't even get those references, and I bet he smells like cigarettes and alcoholic byproducts. I wonder if he's Bad Janet, or if you ask him for something, he'll be screw you, or if he'll do it, or if he's actually in pain and he shows it on a normal Meeseeks who just smiles. So because Morty wants this vision to happen, he basically turns into what the hell?
This is my life. This is good.
Thankfully, Wasp Rick helps Rick free Morty, and the whole lay eggs in their eyeball thing comes back, which thankfully I will not show. Granted, I have questions, how do they have babies? How did he have Waspef, or how did Waspef have her kid? And how is the egg thing different? I'm probably overthinking it.
Sorry I'm late, Mr. President. Had a little crisis at work. Worth it!
It's no problem.
I remember thinking until season 6 that Rick's fabricated origin story in Rick Shank was him stealing Simple Rick's backstory.
I don't think this science thing is gonna pay off.
Well, why don't I get Beth and we'll go out for ice cream?
That, Diane, is the last great idea that will ever be had in this garage.
Like, maybe the Citadel was that corrupt that Simple Rick's story not being totally consensual was 100% an open secret. But wow. For most of the series, we're led to believe that our Rick is the only one to rebel against the Citadel, but still be true to himself, kind of. Yeah, turns out we were wrong. Simple Rick was a Rick who, much like C-137, chose not to be a Rick. He chose a life of family and a life as a father over a life of science, instead deciding to work with wood rather than machines. And don't knock it till you try it. Carpentry pays really good. And much like our Rick, he paid for this decision with his life, but he doesn't know he's still living it. See, Simple Rick was kidnapped and taken to the Citadel by Wonka Rick, where he was hooked up to a machine that forces him to relive his happiest memory, and likely his last memory, his daughter's birthday party, while his brain juices from that memory are harvested to be used as a flavor for a wafer cookie, and it's on repeat over and over so he has no clue he's even trapped.
He realized long ago that the greatest thing he'd ever create was his daughter.
I love Daddy!
We captured that moment. We run it on a loop through Simple Rick's mind.
Obviously, this is horrific and gross. I mean, we don't know what happened to his family. We do know that his Diane likely ceased to be, considering Rick Prime, but what about his Beth? I mean, she was just a child here. Is it like Beth C-137 where she's forever young? Or is she alive but grew up without a father? I mean, both instances are horrible. And all of this for a frickin' cookie. But what's more horrible, or equally horrible depending on your viewpoint, is the fact that he never gets to go home or escape. He's taken hostage by Factory Rick, who wants a portal gun to get him off the Citadel.
What the hell's he doing? Where am I? A bad place, but you're going to a better one soon. Hey!
But to test if the portal gun actually works, he throws Simple Rick through it, and it turns out, well, he's a blood smoothie.
God damn it! A portal to the blender dimension? That's the oldest trick in the book! I'm a Rick! I'm more Rick than any of you!
Then you should know you just killed your only leverage!
Oh well, guess he won't have to be a cookie maker anymore. And I just realized, but isn't that like cannibalism, like Soylent Green? I mean, they're basically eating people juice. It's people juice! Simple Rick wafer cookies is people juice!
Damn it! How am I gonna die with her if I can't even talk to her?
Here's an idea, Morty. Throw that thing in the garbage, stop planning your own death, and talk to whoever you want.
Now you just sound like real Rick.
You're better than that language.
Wow, what a frickin' sellout. Like, I thought Adam Levine was bad. In the Edge of To Morty, Rick Die Repeat, Morty has to help Rick gather probability crystals, but Morty accidentally discovers that the crystals tell him how he'll die, and the most recurring vision is that he's on his deathbed with Jessica. What? Jessica? He finally gets to date Jessica, who loves him, and they're old, and they're likely dying together. So he basically lets Rick die himself to ensure he gets to end up with her, which leads to him spending the episode dealing with Hologram Rick, who is a more cheerful, annoying version of Rick that I kind of like.
I'm a crisis detection and correction hologram generated by a chip that real Rick put in your spine. Real in quotes because calling density privileged entities real is incredibly holophobic.
Hologram lives matter. Hologram lives matter, even if they technically can't die. Hologram Rick tries to get Morty to bring Rick back to life, but it's not in his cosmic path to Jessica. Too bad that Hologram Rick is basically the opposite of Rick's car. Like, if Rick's car was in charge, Rick would be back by like the end of Act 1. But Hologram Rick is programmed to be tolerant. Like, he just came back from tolerance camp. And tolerance does not include making melting babies. It's drawing pictures of people of all colors and creeds holding hands beneath a rainbow.
Why are you pretending to eat chicken?
Excuse me? This chicken is quite real to me.
Yeah, okay, but it doesn't have...
Nutrients? What's the last thing you ate?
Bologna and an orange?
So, no holographic food?
Therefore, Hologram Rick can't threaten Morty into using Rick's DNA to bring him back. I mean, he's also a hologram, what really can he do? All he can do is be like, pretty please, and just annoy him with his liberal arts college baloney.
Look, Rick might be the epitome of bloated flesh privilege. Alright, okay. Just because I can't interact with solid matter means you can just walk all over me?
Morty, bring back Rick, and don't eat at Chick-fil-A or Starbucks. I mean, my college has a Panera, is that really any better? But Morty doesn't listen, causes a buttload of crimes, and by the end, he looks like... Oh. Eventually, Rick comes along with Wasp Rick, and he berates Hologram Rick for not doing his job.
Ah, Wasp! Don't tell me you gained sentience and tried to take over. What? That is some AI racist accusatory Isaac Asimov bull right there.
Do you want him to unleash an Asimov cascade? Do you? Because he will do it. But because they freed Morty and there's about 5 minutes left of screen time, well, they got one more problem to deal with.
I can feel! I have mass! I'm a god now!
I thought you were proud to be a hologram!
That's because I had to be one!
Yep, total Rick behavior. Hypocrisy at its finest. I would totally never do that if I had the right amount of power, but he's eaten by the eggs of Wasp Rick, bringing his brief existence to a close. Oh, and funny story, so you know how Morty did all this so he'd end up with Jessica on his deathbed? Well, it turns out this episode was for nothing. Yes, if Morty continued down this path, he would get Jessica in the end, but not as a lover, as a nurse, and not like one of those long-term ones like Stephen Hawking had. Since Jessica planned to work at a hospice when she got older so she could comfort people on their deathbed, and she probably forgot who Morty even was, like she was just reading his name off of a card.
I'm gonna look at their name tags and I'm gonna say, I love you, followed by whatever it says on their name tag, over and over.
What the
Ugh, poor little Sparrow. He would have gotten what he wanted at the cost of everybody else. Like, I'm just now realizing, ironically, at one point, she's like, hey Morty, do you want to go skinny dipping? And he's like, no, I need to end up with you on my deathbed. Like, dude, she's right here, in the now.
Get together in our 40s? Must continue moving in ways that lead to dying with you.
Young memory Rick and his all-too-real cautionary tale from the future. Let's catch ourselves a bird guy. Who would high-five that, you idealistic hipster?
Yeah, I don't believe he would have turned into our Rick, but he is a scruff, and I like scruffy guys with facial hair. I hope he showered. Anyway, Rick has fixed up Bird Person's body, but his mind is trapped behind the brainwashing done by the Galactic Federation, meaning Rick has to go into his mind and get to the core and fix it. And I normally don't like journey to the center of the mind stories or when they have to go inside somebody's body stories, but this is an exception. Along the way, we get to see how Rick and Bird Person first met, at a music festival of all places, and they hit it off from there.
Thanks for the info, but I'm more on a revenge kick than a results kick.
You omitted key details regarding tonight's mission.
Boy, I'm getting feedback from every direction here. Listen, you help me do my stuff, I'll help you do your stuff.
Bird Person's home planet was held hostage by the Galactic Federation, and he and Rick would often fight against them as freedom fighters, especially during the Battle of Blood Ridge, which, no offense, I feel like when we first got that line in Season 2, it was probably improvised. Like, it just sounds like it was.
Bird Person's big day, Morty, was at Blood Ridge, on Glapflap's third moon against the Gromflamites.
If that's true, it's nice they found a way for it to be canon and a full-on part of Rick's backstory. As Rick is perusing Bird Person's memories, he meets a version of himself, Memory Rick. What makes Memory Rick so cool is he technically isn't Rick from when he was a 30-something freedom fighter. He's how Bird Person remembers him. So that means he's an imperfect copy, and he only knows what Bird Person knows.
If you know me and it looks like you do, you know you're dead. You're about to wonder why all your memories before you met Bird Person feel very generic and bird-themed. Why was my 9th birthday party in a pine tree?
That actually sounds kind of fun, not gonna lie. For example, at one point, we see that the reason Bird Person and Rick are distant in present day is because after Blood Ridge, Rick showed him the portal gun, and not so subtly said he was in love with him and they should travel the cosmos together. But when Bird Person politely rejected him, for whatever reason, I don't think he knew he was in love with him, Rick effectively broke it off.
No, I would not. I would rather be a judgmental dork. Case closed. Really no need to drag it out.
If you need me, use the beacon.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that beacon a lot. I hope I don't wear it out.
However, Bird Person did not realize at the time that Rick had feelings for him. Therefore, Memory Rick feels nothing and actually hates Bird Person for this.
Okay, got it. It wasn't the battle that went wrong. Why are you risking your life? Because you love him. You do, maybe. I don't. Yeah, you're real cool.
And I think that's a pretty unique take. Rick is reluctant to use Memory Rick in their fights, but then he remembers that, hey, he used to be a cool, resourceful freedom fighter, so he does come in handy at times.
He remembers you shooting green holes, but not where they went. Okay, your benefit to cost ratio is rising.
Plus, it is nice for Rick to get some perspective on how far he's come. Per Memory Rick, Rick used to think it's weird that various other Ricks take shelter with their abandoned daughters.
Morty? Oh, hypothetical grandson we go on adventures with. You're one of those creeps who moves in with abandoned adult Beths. It's more complicated than that. You live with a version of our dead daughter.
But now, that's basically Rick's entire life, and he wouldn't trade it for the world. Or how Memory Rick wasted his life trying to avenge the death of his family, and yet our Rick, at least after Blood Ridge, was willing to put that on the back burner for Bird Person. Granted, I don't really like the ending. Memory Rick tries to continue living by jumping out of Bird Person's head and into Rick's mind.
It's not what it looks like. It looks like you propagated yourself from BP's subconscious to mine to try to live as a sentient memory. Fair enough.
Which, I don't mind. But because of the experience, Rick has been humbled and tells him he'll bring him back to life if that's what he wants. Unfortunately, Rick makes a comment that causes Memory Rick to reject the request.
Does being real mean I eventually become you? I assume, yeah?
Yeah, I don't buy that. Your future is shaped by the choices you make, and as our Rick had yet to make those choices, I don't think he would have turned into him. Maybe physically is what he means, but even then, I really don't think so. Not to mention that throughout the episode, the point is made that Memory Rick is not our Rick. I mean, in a way he kind of is, but his perception is based off of what somebody thought about him back when they presumably barely knew him. It's very possible that Memory Rick might actually turn out better than our Rick, since he would be able to find out what happened after he left Blood Ridge, and it wouldn't be such a self-fulfilling prophecy, like, hey, I'm not doomed, I can make something of myself, actually take care of my health. Yeah, that rhymes. Plus, Rick is inventing new stuff all the time, so I feel like if Memory Rick wanted to stay permanently young, he probably could. I mean, he does it in the Fear Hole episode, and I know that technically isn't our Rick either, but hey. But I did like how, unlike most of the entries on this list, he does end up returning. When Jericki forms, Rick and Jerry get used to it, and they become a composite being, even if it means leaving Earth behind forever. But how do they get back to normal? Callbacks.
Morty, we're still in here. There's a memory of myself as a 30-year-old. He kept our egos intact. He saved us. It was a whole action movie, Morty. Memory Rick, he's still trapped in here.
And can I just say, I do enjoy Rick's new voice actor. True, I feel like at times, especially when he yells, it does seem kind of off, but I like how one cool trait that Ian Cardoni does that Justin Roiland didn't was the voices, where Justin basically just used the same voice for every Rick and every Morty, except for like the occasional accent. Ian tries to give each one their own different voice, while staying true to Rick. It really makes each Rick, no matter how big or small their role is, seem like different people, especially the cage scene in when we see Rick Prime. But anyhow, Memory Rick hung out in Jerry's mind, but the problem is, he'll never escape. Jerry is a dingaling who thinks that everything runs on springs.
It has become increasingly clear my daughter married a man who remembers all technology as powered by springs and gears.
Him too? So all Memory Rick could do was hang out in Jerry's mind and survive until an opportunity came. Don't worry, he at least has Memory Gene.
Oh, hey, Memory Rick. Building more sculptures out of springs and gears?
Off, Memory Gene.
Well, at least you have someone. Hey, it's Dufus Rick!
I'm not Dufus Rick. I'm Rick J19 Zeta 7. Oh, is that the timeline where everybody eats poop? You guys are always so mean to me.
You're the smartest man in your universe and you have a haircut like Howard Wolowitz. I mean, screw the rumors, you eat your own poop. You know that despite the fact I still find Big Bang Theory funny because of my nostalgia and guilty pleasure sense, even if I do think, and the fact it's pretty fun to watch if you're on a plane, that his character has aged. Really, Dufus Rick is the character I wish we see more of. And I know by this point I've likely said it for a few few entries, but he's the one I really mean it for. After Rick and Morty escape Citadel custody, a group of the Citadel of Ricks plus their Mortys come to secure the Smith household, and among them is Dufus Rick, who's basically a Rick they keep around to make fun of. He's like the clown from SpongeBob. But before we get there, let's see what he does when the Ricks prank call Jerry.
Cool with you, dog?
Rick, no! Morty!
Got it. The call's coming from inside the house. Look at his face. Look at his face.
I didn't notice this for a few rewatches, but I like how he's the only one in the room who isn't laughing. Like he feels bad for Jerry, or he's like, oh, that's so mean. It's good foreshadowing. Later, Dufus Rick goes to spend time with Jerry, and he's actually enthusiastic about his job path.
I'm in between advertising jobs.
Advertising? Wow. So people need help figuring out what to buy and then you help them?
I mean, it's a little more complicated than that.
Not gonna lie, that's a good summary about advertising, even if I do also agree with Jerry. It just feels really sweet. Unlike the other Ricks, Dufus Rick turns out to be truly good. Like, you actually have to question why he's on the Citadel in the first place. Or at least working as part of their militia. Like, did he willingly go? Is he trapped there? Like, we know he never had a family, so was it because of them? Or, like, why did he never have a family?
They assigned him to me because I never had any kids of my own. But if I did, boy, I'd love them if they were as smart and as successful as you are, Jerry.
But because he's so nice, he gets picked on by the other Ricks, like he's Rudolph with a weirdo haircut. Because of this, he and Jerry bond, since Dufus Rick presumably never met his universe's Jerry, and he doesn't know how they are.
If I've learned one thing, it's that before you get anywhere in life, you gotta stop listening to yourself.
Wow, you really are wise, Jerry. I guess that's why you work in advertising.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is why he approached him and not Beth. Like, maybe this is the first Jerry he's ever met, and he wants to confirm the rumors. I always like the idea of your alternate self being a loser, since I feel like most of the time in media, your alternate self is usually better than you to get you to appreciate what you have. Like, smart Beavis and Butthead are smart, even if they're idiots by the standards of their dimension, but in Beavis and Butthead terms, they're awesome sauce.
This is the opposite of what we expected.
Our logic was in error.
Indeed so.
Or even in this show, we saw that Beth and Jerry, like their best versions of themselves, would still be lonely and miserable. This feels like a cool take on the concept, having a Rick that actually is quote-unquote a loser. And I use that term loosely. Like, he's derided as such, but he has what everybody lacks, character, as in positive character. Like earlier in the episode, the Smiths make fun of Jerry for having a commemorative R2-D2 coin collection, which he thinks is valuable, but they don't. Dufus Rick does tell him it is invaluable, but not in a brutally honest way. In a way where Jerry can still appreciate it for himself.
I'm not gonna tell you that these will increase in value or even hold their current value. The truth is, you bought them because you like them. They have value to you. That's what matters.
And they even get to play Legos and make ovenless brownies together. Jericki shows us what Rick and Jerry could be like if they just got over themselves, and it sucks it can't be like here. Albeit because they found evil Rick, aka OJ Rick, or our Rick, this means Dufus Rick must go home. Aww.
We both know it wouldn't work. It's time to go back to our lives. I love you, Jerry. I love you.
And he has to go back to a society that hates him for him, much like how Jerry has to go back to a family that hates him for him. But at least they have each other.
Are you friends with him? Oh my god, this is rich. I've got like 10 Ricks to call right now.
I have questions. Like, is Dufus Rick even still alive? We don't know if he was on the Citadel when evil Morty destroyed it or what. Like, maybe he got out in time, maybe he was in his own dimension, or maybe he died when the Galactic Federation invaded. Like, what happened to him? I just want to know.
You think you could do that, Morty? You think anyone but me could do that ever in a billion years? Do you think if God existed, he could do it? The answer is no. If God exists, it's me.
What? I always go on and on about how Rest and Relaxation is one of my favorite Rick and Morty episodes, if not my absolute favorite next to Mortyplicity. And now I finally have a chance to talk about it. Rick and Morty have been stressed out as of late, so they decide to take a vacation to an alien spa, where they're offered the chance to try out a new detox machine. And right off the bat, we see that Rick is probably a prime candidate for it. Prime, poor choice of words.
Try swallowing the giant ball of snot that's dangling around in the back of your throat. It's disgusting. Nobody wants to hear that. That's what you do.
I'm like 98% sure that guy intentionally does that in order to get people to use the machine. Like for them to realize, wow, you really seem angry, hop in. Oh my god, you're right, especially considering this part.
It's all good.
It's nice of you to let me off the hook. It's still unacceptable behavior, and I do regret it.
Believe me, man, I've been working here a long time. I get it.
The pair jump in, and seconds later, we discover...
Morty!
Rick?
Morty!
Oh! What happened?
We blew up, idiot!
Notice how the first thing Toxic Rick does when he wakes up is call for Morty. Not to be like, Morty, serve me! But like, Morty, please tell me you're okay! Don't worry, we'll get there when we get there. Toxic Rick is Rick's worst impulses on crack, speed, and some cocaine, where he'll yell at Morty over the tiniest impulse and scream about how God can't possibly exist like he's trying to one-up Ryan Griffin in the atheist department.
We're in hell, aren't we, Rick?
You're so stupid, Morty! You're an idiot! There's no such thing as hell!
I believe you, but I just want to die!
You can die when I say so!
Dang, dude, okay, I get it, there is no God in this world, even though there is technically an afterlife and a devil. And also Zeus. But is there a flying spaghetti monster? At first, Toxic Rick assumes that he and Morty are the real ones. Like maybe because Rick yelled at the guy, he got back at him by overloading the machine.
Takes more than that to kill Rick and Morty, mother-
Never badmouth a minimum wage worker, my viewers. They have nothing to lose, and they control everything, even your food. Plus, they're people too. I really should have led with that, but hey, I like joking, so there we go. But as it turns out, the machine worked as intended.
The machine didn't blow up, it worked normally. It removed our toxins. We're the toxins. Are you listening, you stupid little garbage person? We're what got removed!
Okay, a few things. Note to self, steal the phrase, you stupid little garbage person. Hey, Gaffrin, come over here. You're a stupid little garbage person. And also, I remember thinking for the longest time he said, we're what God removed. Like, I know he said, we're what got removed, but I'm sorry, I can't hear it as anything other than we're what God removed, just because it's funnier. Like, he spends his entire scene ranting about how he doesn't believe in God, or if God existed, he'd be more powerful than him, and then he's like, he was so pissed off at us, Morty, that he removed us from existence. It kind of reminds me of that joke in Smiling Friends, where Pim's dad says 14 hours, but because of his accent, it comes off as 48 hours, and in context of the scene, it just sounds funnier than what they intended. A reason I picked Toxic Rick and why I like this episode is, I like what the episode did with the toxin cliche. Normally, when they have a character remove their flaws, or at least encounter their flaws, it counts as a character study. Like, oh, they need these flaws to be better, or they make you who you are. And in a way, Rick and Morty does that by deconstructing the conflict. Like, Healthy Rick points out, the way their flaws were removed was via a machine, and obviously considering it's an alien machine, it can't know the difference between right and wrong every single time. Maybe you're trusting a people, but that isn't a flaw to you, so why would it be a flaw to a machine? Even if you trust people, then they mug you. Or maybe you're too violent, but you come from a culture where that's considered good, or it's your job to be violent. To most people, a flaw is something they hate or dislike about themselves, whereas from a writing standpoint, a flaw is something that inhibits you, and it's usually pretty objective. So instead, the machine goes off of what you consider to be a flaw or a toxin, and for Rick, unfortunately, that's...
I had all my problems removed. My entitlement, my narcissism, my crippling loneliness, my irrational attachments.
Like, yes, obviously Toxic Rick is a worse version of Rick, and one of the few good things you could say about him is because he's so angry, he overthinks things, like turning the whole world toxic just because he can't get healthy Morty and Rick into the vet. But in a way, I kinda like how this episode implies that he and Morty are a lot alike, where to them, their most healthy versions are the complete opposite of themselves. Like to Rick, this version of being happy is being like how he perceives Morty. Carefree, always thinking of others, albeit lacking any sort of empathy because he thinks his love for Morty is wrong in some way. Either being unfair to Morty because of how he holds him back, or because maybe Morty's holding him back or something.
I do, but it's not our place, you know, to pick and choose which world gets saved from what apocalypse. Our toxins have as much a right to their worldview as... Morty, how is it healthy to slap me?
Which means he feels no empathy if he, slaps him. Whereas with Morty, his version of being healthy is basically being, a more destructive Rick.
Eat some crudite! Is this organic? All right. You know, the evening continues.
Where he's basically a sociopath who thinks of nobody but himself and doesn't care about who he hurts, which means he lacks empathy too. Horseshoe! Therefore, Toxic Rick actually cares about Morty, and I hate to say it, it's kinda great.
Morty, not that I give it, but are you okay?
Jesus Christ, it hurts!
Relax, you're gonna be fine. Grandpa's here. You think that's funny? You gotta have a sense of humor about these things.
Aww, he's even willing to sacrifice himself if it means that Toxic Morty will be able to live. And eventually, Rick fulfills that request. Eventually. But the thing is, he did it. I wonder if, what I would be like if I were in the toxin machine. Probably if I was healthy, I'd be a much more blank slate than Morty. Kitty, what are you implying? Catherine, I said get the out of here, you stupid little garbage person.